Former senior UX designer at the Nerdery, and today I'm actually just trying to show an example of a problem that we solved at the Nerdery, which is a very large company using something with the Internet of Things. So I'm hoping that, similar to what you learned from Joel in the opening keynote, that we can look at the problems that we have in design forward with that design thinking in mind versus kind of rushing the sensors, inputs and outputs, and just coming up with something, as fun as it is. So I've been at the Nerdery for about 3.5 years, and at that point of time, you find a lot of things about a company that you do or don't like, some of the little things at a company that drive you nuts over the years, and especially working on client projects, innovating these types of things for big companies. You kind of look back at yourself as a company and say, why aren't we doing these things for ourselves? So to give you an idea of what the Nerdery is, it's actually a huge company of 522 developers, designers, project managers, and so on. They're located down in Bloomington. They also have many other locations all over the United States. But the one thing that is constant is their growth at the Nerdery. When I started back yonder, there were a hell of a lot less people there. I think about 200 at the time, and now it appears to be, as I said earlier, about up to 500. So beyond opening new offices, the current office that they have continues to grow. And as we see more and more people come into the space, we constantly find that that space is just not doing its job anymore. So as you have all these developers packed in at a billable hour, that we charge our client services by the hour. So every hour at the Nerdery counts as far as profit goes. So one of those problems that I found that could actually kind of tie into that was the Nerdery's bathroom. And as absurd as that sounds, this is something that I watched people walk up to, colleagues of mine, walk up to a door and try to get in but not be able to. And nobody likes to be that awkward guy that's jiggling the handle outside the door or be the guy inside the bathroom kind of cowering. So this bathroom is especially important because, you know, we have 500 people as a company, but this is a bathroom that was located around 70 people. So you can imagine 70 people all fighting for one bathroom, and why this one bathroom is important, because it's the only private bathroom in that area. So if you're going to get some business done, this is usually the spot to go. So constantly seeing this walk of shame, my colleagues and I said, you know, that's not good, being able to see someone walk up knowing to use the bathroom, and then we're watching them also walk off, kind of a confused look on their face, knowing that we know that they have to go to the bathroom now. But as I said, with this large campus that we have, is that can be a matter of 10 to 20 minutes of finding the right bathroom. It could mean a 5-minute walk all the way across campus to see if even a stall is open, maybe not a private one, but it is a bit of a lottery. So the one thing that we started playing around with about a year ago was the Arduino stuff. As a designer, I'm always trying to get better at technology. The things I design for, I don't feel like I can do a good job unless I fully understand them. So I picked up an Arduino Uno, played around with it, got familiar with input and output, and thought, hey, this is actually a pretty good chance for us to solve that problem using this technology that we're playing around with for fun. So one of the big things whenever you're approaching one of these projects is, as Joel said earlier, find a problem that you want to solve, no matter how minor. So we knew the problem that we wanted to solve was the bathroom always being in use or not knowing if it's in use or not. But one of the big challenges when you're declaring some sort of embedded project is defining the proper input and the output. I think that's something that really makes or breaks a product or even a design as a whole. If I have to put too much information in, that's not a good thing. If the output isn't satisfactory, that's not a good thing either. People wonder why they went to the effort of doing so. In this case, it was very, very interesting because we were looking for the type of the input that would allow us to know if someone is in the bathroom or not. And if we use our imaginations, there's many ways to do that. Detect if there's light, movement, the list goes on, but a better question is, how do we appropriately detect if there's use? Even when we start using those types of sensors, it brings up the question of, is someone watching me in the bathroom? Does someone know who I am? Do they know what I'm doing? Are they tracking my bathroom usage as an employee? So we definitely needed to make sure that there was this constraint of, you're not being tracked, we don't know who's in there, there's no camera in here watching you use the bathroom. So, and the output also has to be accessible enough to make sure that people can actually know if the bathroom is open or not. So one of the things that we chose was, for an input, a read sensor. These are very, very, very cheap parts. They're like $1 on Adafruit. We had a ton of these lying around and thought, hey, this could actually be a pretty unobtrusive way to detect if someone was in the bathroom or not. Because as a normal human being, I hope that you close the door behind you when you use a bathroom. If you're like my grandpa, perhaps not, but this is a really good way to at least detect if the bathroom door is open or closed. There's always some false positives in there if someone were to close the door after using it. Of course, it's going to show that it's in use. But we wanted to take that risk, knowing that the ability to detect if someone was in the bathroom was as easy as determining if the sensor was on or off. So the read sensor is really clever. It's just a magnet inside there. It's a switch, just high or low. So finding the proper output, now that we have the input defined, was we had a few NEOPIXELS from Adafruit laying around. And these things are really cool to play around with. They're super, super bright. But I've yet to find many people who have found good use for them, especially after spending all that money. They have this nice, bright pixel array of LEDs that can display patterns, animations, and so on. But the problem is a lot of people don't know how to use them as well. So what we did is we actually hopped in and we figured out that all this is really just an array of numbers that we can address individually with an RGB value and also any sort of like brightness value too. The one thing I'm really thankful for with Adafruit's products is that they really take a lot of the complexity out. We were able to hop right in and start designing this stuff. So knowing at a place like the Nerdery that is known for innovation, it's known for being quirky, we could have easily just settled with something that would be, as an output, a green or a red light. But in this case, what we wanted to do is create something a little bit more akin to their culture. So just a very similar, or very, very simple green check mark or red X to indicate the bathroom is in use or not. So once we have that input and output defined, it's all pretty gravy from there. One of the things that I ran to as kind of a comfort zone was the Arduino Uno. So we prototyped our original concept, just making sure the input and output was doing good. And it's a super, super phenomenal device just to get that going at the ground level. So from there, we actually minimized our project down to the Arduino Nano. That was pretty helpful for us to kind of put it on the back of the NEOPIXEL and make it portable, use a battery and things like that. But really where the magic came is when we actually discovered the Spark core. As we were minifying things, we also noticed that, hey, there's also this tiny device that actually connects to Wi-Fi. And as a company like the Nerdery that builds internet applications, it just seemed very serendipitous. So knowing how easy this thing was to use, we were able to actually take our code and translate it right over to the Spark core. And before we knew it, we actually had a whole API going that we could actually check the sensor values in just instantaneously. And the reason why I shine on the Spark core so much is because I've tried solutions like the Raspberry Pi, the Arduino Uno, and there's just that overhead of setting up a whole environment, finding modules and plugins. I really don't feel like playing around with Unix, Linux, etc. I just want to get this thing up and going. And I think that's where Spark really, really came to save the day. So at a high level, this is a very general concept of how the application works. The read sensor basically just comes into contact and says if the bathroom is open or not, and that's basically it. So at a very, very high level, it's super, super easy, and as a designer, this is the level that I try to stay at. All those little tiny pieces that come together will follow, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of other smart people out there who will probably figure it out faster than I will. So this is actually a photo of the Nerdery bathroom with the sensor installed. We snuck in actually after work. Pretty laid back environment, so we were able to get in there fairly late at night, and we just put this thing up. We had just a bunch of crappy wire. Luckily, there was a shelf up there that already existed for, I believe, the Nerdery doorbell, which plays the Jetson themes. But we wanted to make sure that when we put this thing up, that we weren't going to announce it to people. We weren't going to say, hey, this is a brand new feature. This is, come check this thing out. We wanted it to be silent. And deploying this, we simply just put it up on this shelf that happened to be next to, as you can see, a lot of cubicles, quite a cubicle farm of, again, up to 60 people. we wanted to put it up there with just some label of, hey, this is the men's bathroom status, a green check or a red X. You get it or you don't. So this was actually kind of an exercise too of what were people's assumptions on this as well. How is this thing detecting if I was in the bathroom or not? Then comes in that privacy and appropriate sensor input and output piece. But after putting this up, a lot of people thought it was kind of unique. Marketing got a hold of it. A lot of people were kind of concerned in some way. But when creating any solution, we actually found out that we created problems as well. So this is actually a skit from the Nerdery, thanks to Mike Ross. The Nerdery actually does weekly skits. And this is actually the week that we launched the bathroom app, or the bathroom sensor. So this is just an illustration of what it's like if you're running around a campus when you need to go and you're trying to find a seat to say. So we actually created some problems with people who actually could see the bathroom in kind of their line of sight from their desk and have that advantage of knowing when it's open and closed. So by creating the sensor, we were actually kind of evening the playing field. So a lot of people were mad that their secret bathroom and their ability to see when it was open or closed was now destroyed. So as I said with a company like the Nerdery is that we're a technology company, and just stopping at using Arduino is just absurd to me. For a company like the Nerdery, it has to be online. We build these things every day. So I work together with a good friend of mine, Chris Cheney. He's a really solid front-end developer and JavaScript guru. He's able to take Node.js along with Spark's API and within a night basically create a very, very flexible real-time application that would spit out just that simple high or low data and convert it into something different. So we deployed that silently as well, and we shared the URL with a couple of people who sat in the area. We didn't announce it or anything like that, and it actually spread like wildfire. Just the novelty of a bathroom having a sensor, being able to tell when they can go to the bathroom or not was just awkwardly kind of exciting. So this is actually a view from my desk. I would just look up and I would see people using it, or in this case, someone who actually dedicated one of their monitors to that. I don't think I would want to be known at the office as that guy who is just always looking for a chance to go. But we did learn some things in the iteration process of this, because if people didn't want to keep it open as a tab, kind of broadcasting that they needed to use the bathroom, that there were other ways that we could utilize this for like Chrome plugins. So an example of that is that we actually made it so the favicon of the application would change from red to green in case you had it as a pinned tab or anything like that. So there's some things that we kind of learned along the way, but we really had no expectations. But the one thing that we knew is we needed more people to use this thing. So user awareness is always a big thing when it comes to the Internet of Things, right? That how does someone know the value of something if they can't see it, if they don't know they can connect to it, things like that. So as you saw in the previous example of the older gentleman having a problem finding a bathroom, is that it seems like there can be a much more instantaneous way to receive that, to kind of cut down on that time. So what we did is we created a mobile-friendly version of it. It's just a very quick, responsive app, straight out of the box. And what we wanted to do is really, instead of tell people about the app, is just show them. So one of the ways as an experienced designer that I like to look at things is I don't want to send out an email just saying, hey, here's now this feature, here's this feature. At that point, I feel like I'm taking it far too seriously. So instead, what we did is we actually looked into one of my favorite technologies is NFC. If you're lucky enough to have a device that supports it, everything's pretty cool, but in this case, what we were able to do is actually put a URL on a NFC card and actually put it onto posters. So in this case, we actually put a poster on the front of the bathroom door that says, hey, is the bathroom in use? Hold your phone up here and to get the latest news on what's going on with the bathroom. So as awkward as it sounds, there's many different types of things you can use for this. As we're seeing here, QR codes are a pretty big one too. But at equal lengths, I had a hard time also justifying the actual use of this thing, because for better or worse, you're also going up to the door, assuming that someone is in there, and you're holding your phone up to the door to obtain that URL. I thought that may be a little bit better than a QR code, where I'm sitting there taking a photo and perhaps the person walks out of the bathroom, which could be far worse. So in this case, we're able to get people in to find out what this thing was, get people excited about it. But there was actually something that we were doing behind the scenes that was a little secretive and kind of actually cool, which we were logging the data. Yeah, use your imagination, that title. So what we were doing was exporting to a spreadsheet every minute for a whole month of what was going on with that sensor. And luckily there's a lot of easy integration pieces with Google Spreadsheets and Spark. So we're up and running like even before we actually announced this. So we gathered a month's worth of data and actually found out some interesting things about bathroom usage. Even also that the bathroom is being used at odd hours, which makes me think someone is actually living at the Nerdery, which is totally possible. But in this data, we found a lot of false positives too. As I mentioned before, people perhaps shut the door behind them. Perhaps the janitor would close the door at night. So we had to scrub through some of the data a little bit. But what we found was actually kind of interesting. From a business standpoint, as Joel was saying earlier, we know a lot of those things for the consumer are really good. It has to be entertaining, engaging, more convenient. But from a business side of this is where we started to look at things of how does this impact an organization of 500 people. So what I did is I charted out all the data and found that on average there's about 5 hours in the workday that's being used in this one bathroom. There are about 6 or 7 other bathrooms at the Nerdery which don't have sensors on them to analyze it, but this gives us a pretty good idea of what the most popular bathroom its usage is going to. And as I said before too about the Nerdery, they're a service company, so billing clients by the hour, every hour counts. And if someone is not in the bathroom, they're usually looking for a bathroom. So as a company, you can't really say, people are using the bathroom too much, we need to get rid of that, or you need some sort of special process to go to the bathroom here. It's just inevitable. So one of the things that this really opened my eyes up to was this whole concept of the Internet of Things and tracking the usage. I mean, as you heard just before this too, is just the on and off state. Just when we get into digital, it's high or low. And when it comes down to it, this is just a room that someone goes into. So what I wanted to do is reframe the problem and take it away from a bathroom and take a look at what other types of rooms in businesses, especially here at the Nerdery, are problematic. So one thing that we find is that there's a different type of room that's plagued by a different kind of squatters, which, as anyone can guess, is the conference rooms. So the Nerdery has a ton of conference rooms. A lot of them are pretty cool, as you guys may have seen. Like one themed is Springfield and things like that. Very, very quirky office. But we have at least 35 conference rooms in just one office. And finding a conference room at the right time is an awful experience. If a lot of you work at a bigger company, you know that calendars lie to you, that people aren't actually in those meetings. Perhaps nobody attends those meetings anymore. And when you're in a pinch, when you need to find those rooms, it's always a problem. I can never trust what goes on the Google Calendar, but I can at least trust something that's very instantaneous about my environment. So I think with changing the sensor type a little bit, knowing that we're not too concerned with privacy, people aren't going to think you're spying on them while they're using the bathroom. A conference room is much more open, relaxed. We're able to use different sensors while still keeping it somewhat anonymous. So what we did here is we actually traded out the sensor for a PIR sensor. Pretty easy to use. There's some tweaking that we had to do to at least detect that if someone was in a room and if they were moving. Problematic parts would be if someone perhaps stopped moving, if it was a really dead meeting. But otherwise, this is a really good challenge for us to say, hey, what is it like for all these other 35 rooms in their efficiencies? So what we're able to do from there is actually create an iPhone app. And this was taking the same exact code that we built previously of just detecting if something was in use or not, and then applying it to an application that could be more robust, offering different locations, a list of available rooms, and also the status with each of them. So in this example, we're able to see that we can actually view the details of a room, find out if it has a phone, if it has a web camera, if it has whiteboards, any of that metadata that may impact my decision to choose that room or not. So this is a very powerful tool that we We built out, we designed, and then we weren't able actually towards the end of my career at the Nerdery to install sensors in every single room due to the cost and budgeting of 2015. But at the very least, we were able to learn a lot of the things that keep these applications flexible. But what I mean by that is that no matter if it's 0 or 1, this application can still exist and morph into anything else. So with that being said, all of the work that we've done thus far is open source. All the parts you can find on Adafruit. There is a blog post that we made a few months ago on Adafruit's Learn section, where you guys can actually get the whole details on how to do this yourself from scratch, all the parts, including all the JavaScript, to get you up and running in a matter of a night. So what I hope you guys can be inspired by is to take some of that code and transform it into something different, perhaps something that solves a different type of problem. Beyond conference rooms, we're also looking at parking garages and things like that to detect use or not. So this framework is very flexible, and I definitely wanted to share it with you guys to see what you guys can build on top of this as well. But otherwise, that's my presentation on smart offices. But I'm curious if any of you have any questions, feel free to ask now. But I will be outside, kind of kissing babies and shaking hands. Feel free to come talk to me if you'd like. Otherwise, if anybody has any questions, we can move forward.